Welcome to Nuke's Fitness Podcast. My name is Manouk Vink, and after having struggled with my body image and my fitness journey for more than 10 years, leading me to all sorts of extremes, I have now finally cracked the code on how you can achieve a fit and toned physique without extremes and restrictions. Now, being a certified nutritionist and personal trainer, I have made it my mission to help women achieve their body goals by feeling empowered through fitness instead of being afraid of foods and being controlled by the fitness industry. In this podcast, I will be sharing with you tried and true methods on how you can finally achieve your dream body and tell you the secrets most coaches won't. So if you are tired of working your ass off without getting results, or you feel like you're putting in all the work but not seeing change in the mirror, this podcast is for you. I will be dropping some fitness truth bombs so you can start taking control of your body goals while still enjoying life. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nuke's Fitness Podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something a little more close to home to me, a little more personal, but there is something in there that is very valuable for you to learn. And if you've listened to my first episode, I told you a little bit about my background story and a little bit about myself. If you remember from that episode, I mentioned that as a kid, I had OCD. So when I was young, I developed OCD as a form to control my life around me because from a very young age, we moved around. So my life was very volatile because I kept going from different country to different country to different country. And at such a young age, that affected me. So I developed OCD. And a lot of us understand OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, as a cleaning disorder where things need to be organized and things need to be cleaned and things like that. Well, mine kind of showed up in a different area. So I'll just take you back a little bit, and then what we're going to talk about is how OCD affected my fitness journey and what I learned from that and why that is valuable for you to understand as well. So it started when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I started obsessively washing my hands. So I would, every time I touched something that I thought was dirty, which was basically everything, I would obsessively wash my hands to the point that my hands were so dry from all the washing that I would get like cuts in my hands, and that's when my mom realized something was wrong. So she took me to a child psychologist, and there I was diagnosed with OCD. And later on, as I got older, it kept transforming into something new. So it would go away and then it would come back into a different thing. So the washing hands would seem maybe still like an OCD. Like basically obsessive compulsive disorder is when you develop a behavioral pattern that you have to obsessively do because you feel like if you don't do it, then something bad will happen, and you can't quite explain what it is, but you feel like something bad is going to happen to you. And especially as a kid, I would think of, I don't know, like crazy things. But when I was doing it with the hand washing, it was just every time I touched something, I felt like a layer of dirt on my hands. So I kept washing my hands obsessively. And then later, when in my preteens, teens, it developed into my sleeping pattern. So I would have like a whole sleeping routine. So basically I would, I don't even know how to explain it. It's so much. Like I would have this whole list of things that I needed to do in the right order before going to bed. So I would have to push everything in my closet all the way to the back of the closet. And I would force myself to read 10 pages before falling asleep. And even if I was falling asleep while reading the book, I would force myself to wake up because I needed to read those 10 pages. And I had to brush my teeth in a specific order. There was like something about, I had curtains that were being hooked around like a curtain hook. I don't know how to call them. But if it was like even like slightly hanging behind it or caught on it, that was not okay. And then my mom tried to calm me down because I would start panicking for bedtime at around 5 p.m. already because I knew I had to go to sleep. But I panicked because I knew my whole routine had to go in order. Otherwise, something bad was going to happen. I couldn't quite explain what that bad thing is. Like, you really think like something life ending is going to happen if you don't do your routine in the way that you think you should be doing it. And it's people with OCD will understand exactly what I mean, but otherwise it's very difficult to explain because it's like this weird mental game where you think like it's life ending, like something like the world is going to end, or something bad is going to happen to you, or if you don't do it. So I would force myself through these routines. And it would keep evolving. So my mom would try to calm me down, and she'd be like, "Oh, honey, come here. Why don't I give you some hot milk to calm you down with aniseed?" That would like calm me down. I love that, by the way. And instead of that being something that would calm me down, it was added onto the lists of things that needed to happen before I went to bed. So it's very like you get a lot of anxiety from this, because if things don't go how they're supposed to go, like you panic like crazy. So I went to a lot of child psychologists to help, cure this or get rid of this OCD. And at the age of 14, I believe, I thought I had beaten it. So at 14, I went to this psychologist and she really helped me. And then one day she just told me to not do the routine after like a lot of therapy, of course. And then I thought I was rid of it. So I thought I was rid of OCD. But what I didn't realize is that it manifested in something else. So at age 15, 16, I'm not quite sure when exactly, it manifested itself in nutrition. So I thought I just, was watching my nutrition, or I was just, I developed a gray area of an eating disorder. But in actual fact, it was my OCD again kicking in and trying to take control of a certain situation. So I was obsessive with my nutrition, and that then, as you guessed, leaked into my training. And the reason I can be very, I can force myself to do certain things. So when it comes to tasks, when it comes to training, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to me competing in a bodybuilding competition, is because I have this mechanism where if I have to do something, I have to do it, and there's no way out. So I wouldn't allow myself to take a break, or to stop, or to not do it, because I had to do it. Like it's really like a really obsessive, it's literally obsessive compulsive disorder. So it's this obsessive thing where I need to do it, because if I don't do it, then the world is going to end. And even though in my teens and when I was prepping for my bodybuilding competition, it wasn't the same feeling of the world is going to end. It wasn't the same feeling as if, something very bad was going to happen to me. That wasn't the same feeling, but I still had that same mechanism where I could really force myself through something because I had this in my head. So I needed to reach that goal. So whatever I had to do, I do it to achieve that goal. And although that sounds very inspiring and motivational and well done, you're so disciplined, you're so committed, 100%. Yes, of course, but it comes to a fault. So it was easier. I don't know if that's the right word. It was just part of who I was. I still have that mechanism a little bit. I 100% do, but not as severely, and I'm very aware of it now. But I didn't realize that when I was training for my bodybuilding competition, or when I was focusing on my nutrition or my training, that this was still my OCD somewhere. My obsessive compulsive disorder still taking the reign somewhere, because I could force myself to do things or through things that I didn't necessarily feel like doing, or I didn't want to do it because I had to do it. Because that little voice in my head was saying, you have to do it. You have no choice. So the message I want to give here is, When I was struggling through this and when I was prepping for my bodybuilding competition and when I was being obsessive with nutrition and training, there was no like break. There was no quitting. There was no stopping. And a lot of trainers and coaches will say to you, you shouldn't have a quitter's mentality. You should always keep going. There's never any excuses. I disagree with that because that's how I used to live. And putting myself through that, I realized that sometimes, yeah, you're allowed to take a break. And sometimes, yes, there is an excuse. And sometimes, you should listen to your body and not force yourself through something that your body shouldn't be doing. And so what I realized through that journey is that I put my body through hell and back, doing this extreme diet and doing these extreme workouts. And I'm sure if someone was in a different headspace and they knew how to balance it out, it's a different story. But when you have this obsessive thing where, and I'm sure even though you might not have OCD, a lot of people can recognize like some form of it, where you go and check the door a few times because you want to make sure that it's locked, or you can't have closets open at night, or where, when you're putting the cutlery away, they all have to be facing a certain way. We all have or can recognize something like that. Like I think my mom told me once that she, for example, always has to count stairs when she walks upstairs. So we all have some form of that. I don't know if everybody does, but I feel like everybody can resonate with some of that. But it's not taking over your life. And when I was younger, it was taking over my life, and it was becoming like unbearable to live with it, and also for the people around me to live with it. So when I realized it was also in my training and nutrition, it's because I could really like bite into something and not let go. So I was so obsessive when it came to training and nutrition that the rest of my life sort of, didn't matter. So I couldn't even speak about any other topic. I couldn't even think about any other topic. I couldn't even do any other topic than the training and nutrition. And even when I was on a holiday, and there's just one holiday that I'll never forget, I missed half of the holiday because all I was focused on was on my nutrition and training. So I missed relaxing on the beach, doing certain activities because I wanted to get my 2-hour training in. And I wanted to make sure that I was obsessive about food. So I was depriving myself from food so much that when we hit a buffet, I would go crazy for small things that I could have. And it was like just a very, very unhealthy relationship that I just became obsessed with food, and I became obsessed with training to the point that like nothing else mattered. And I don't know if I need to even explain how unhealthy that can be. That I was prepping for my bodybuilding competition, and being on a diet of fish and veg only, I started going crazy. And all I could think about was my next meal. And so what I would do, there was like this little coffee shop, and they always had like tasters out. And I thought, I'm sure if I eat like, it was like a centimeter, like the smallest little tasters that were out there, I'm sure if I eat one of those, it won't matter. Like nothing will happen. So I started obsessively like looking for little bites of things like that, tasters of things, because I was going crazy with this stuff. So, so as you can see, this manifested in my fitness journey to the point, well, I didn't realize it was OCD at the time. I mean, now looking back, I can see that it's a similar mechanism, and it is OCD, and these personality disorders often are comorbid. So when you have like OCD, that can be comorbid. So at the same time, a lot of the time they show up together. So an eating disorder can show up with OCD, or ADHD with OCD also show up together. Like, just to make it simple, like these things show up together. So I didn't realize it was the same mechanism. And my mom was actually the one that was like, yeah, honey, it's the same thing that's going on here. And only until you're out of it, that's when you realize how it's the same mechanism, because it was just obsessive behavior. It was obsessive behavior to the point that nothing, like I said, nothing else in my life mattered. And why this is so important to touch upon is because I think there's a false, I don't know if it's a false narrative. I think there is like a lot of motivational content online. There's a lot of trainers online that are in that headspace where they're obsessive and they're preaching this don't quit, do whatever it takes. And yes, I agree with some of that. I mean, when you want to achieve your dreams and your goals, you shouldn't quit and you should do whatever it takes, but to a certain extent where it's not taking over the rest of your life, where it's not out of balance with the rest of your life. So as an example, now when my body is sick or when I'm sick, I don't force myself through a workout. Where when I was sick during my competition phase, I was sick, guys. I was like so sick that one of the trainers was like, "What are you doing here? Go home." And I forced my body through a workout when you're weak and like feverish and things, like imagine that, like forcing your body through a workout then, and just forcing yourself to wake up every single day and go for a run the moment your eyes open. Forcing myself through 2-hour workouts when I was malnourished and not eating enough food and when my body was sick. Like, it was just such obsessive behavior. And even going back to my teens where I would punish myself. So if I ate something that was not in my diet or that was unhealthy or you name it, I would try to rectify the wrong by doing sit-ups in my room, jump rope in my room, running up and down the stairs, depriving myself of food, things like this, where it just becomes this obsessive behavior. And it becomes this obsessive behavior where you punish yourself if you haven't done what you should have done. So this just brings me to the point where if you are in this headspace, if I am speaking to you and you're one of these people that is in this obsessive phase or feels like they need to punish themselves, they need to work harder, and they feel like they're not doing enough, even though you're clearly doing enough. I'm not speaking to those of you who are, sitting on the sofa telling yourself you're going to start next week or start tomorrow. I'm speaking to those of you who are beating yourself down with your training and with your nutrition. You're not seeing the results that you want, and you are constantly forcing yourself to do certain things, like work out more, like restrict yourself more, like skip certain meals, like deprive yourself of the things that you love because you feel like you're not doing good enough. And that's the person that I'm speaking to, because that's the person that I was. I always, like my mom would say, you're constantly whipping yourself on the back. Like, you're never doing enough. You're never doing enough. You work yourself like a workhorse because you can always do more. I'm speaking to you. And even if you're that person that is sitting on the sofa right now and you are beating yourself up because you're not doing enough, it's not the right method. It's not the right method, because that method, I always think of, if you have a child or if you have a friend, a best friend or a child, and you think of how you speak to yourself in that way, like you're not doing enough, you're not good enough, you should do more, you can't do this, You ate that chocolate bar. You better run up and down the stairs now. You can't skip this workout. I don't care how sick you are. If this is how you're speaking to yourself, I want you to think of how you're speaking to yourself, and then think about, would you speak to your best friend, to your daughter, to your son, to someone you love? Would you speak to them like that? And if the answer is no, then why are you doing it to yourself? And if the answer is yes, maybe reevaluate how you speak to the people you love. But if the answer is no, then you should think about why you're doing that to yourself. Why do you deserve that treatment? And do you think it's going to get you where you want to be in the long run? And when you achieve your goal, do you think that you'll be happy there? Or do you think there's always more to achieve? Right? So, yeah, I think, of course, there is some discipline that is needed to achieve your body goals. Of course, there is some form of commitment and some form of routine that needs to be followed when you're achieving your body goals. But that has to be within certain boundaries. It needs to be in a loving, respectful way where you're also respecting your body, because your body deserves love and not punishment. And I promise you that when you treat your body with love instead of punishment, and instead of forcing it through things when it's weak and when it's down, it's going to respond better in the long run. It's because you might achieve that look for a few months because you've beat your body down and you forced it to be there. But then after you give it a moment to breathe, and after you try to maintain that, I promise you won't be able to maintain it. And your body's going to make you give it a break. Because that's what happened to me. I realized that this wasn't worth it when I started prepping for my second bikini fitness competition, because after my first bikini fitness competition, I stayed lean for about 5 months because I was still in this rigorous routine. I was forcing myself to do the extreme workouts, the extreme diet, even out of my competition, while obsessively, slowly increasing my calories. So I was also doing that obsessively in a good way, but not in a free, balanced way. And after a while, my body started to gain weight and, fat, because as a woman, you're naturally, you have a higher fat percentage than, especially in my bodybuilding competition, I was 9% fat. That is not healthy or normal for a woman. So I started gaining weight again, and I still looked fantastic, but because I had body dysmorphia because of this competition, I started panicking and I wanted to compete again so that I could lose all the weight again. So instead of letting my body recover fully, I forced myself to go through another prep. And during this prep, I again pulled all the tricks out of the bag. I decided to do cardio for 45 minutes twice a day and then train an hour on 1,200 calories. And even though I was doing all of that, my body barely lost weight. I had to fight through it. And I was nowhere near as lean as I was in the first competition. And that's because my body was literally sticking up the middle finger to me and going, yeah, fuck you, we're not doing this anymore. And when I was going through that and I was putting in so much work and so much effort into achieving my body goals or my competition weight, and not seeing the results that I wanted, even though I was pulling everything out of the bag that I could, I realized this wasn't worth it. That's when I was like, hang on a second, what am I doing this for? What am I doing this for? And why am I should listen to my body. My body obviously doesn't want to do this. And how is it worth it to keep going through this? And that's when my body showed me that I needed to take a break. So long term, I had to suffer the consequences of that extreme behavior because it took me a very long time to find balance and to actually be happy and content with my shape and with my body and be able to achieve the body goals that I'd always wanted to achieve. Sorry for the interruption. I think my doggies see something outside. It's just life. So I'm sorry if you hear them in the background. So anyways, I thought this was a valuable topic to touch upon because, even though not all of you struggle with OCD, I'm sure, we all recognize this feeling of getting obsessive over something and wanting to achieve something so badly that you literally do everything in your power to achieve it to the point that it's not healthy anymore. And that's why I want you to resonate with this topic, because for those of you who are so obsessed with achieving a certain physique or achieving a certain body goal, I want you to protect your body and yourself and your mental health in this process. I want you to realize that these extreme measures that you're taking to achieve a certain body type are going to blow up in your face eventually. And that's why it's so important to achieve your body goals in a sustainable and in a balanced manner, rather than constantly forcing yourself through things, constantly whipping yourself on the back, constantly forcing your body through things that it shouldn't have to go through anymore. And forcing yourself through a life that you're probably not even enjoying. And for what reason? So that you can look better for a few months, and then what are you going to do with that? Like, you're going to look good, but you're not going to be able to eat the foods that you love. You're not going to be able to enjoy the quality time that you have with your friends and your family because you're so afraid of losing the shape that you've achieved with all the crazy hard work that you've done. Or because you're so afraid of not being able to achieve your body goals. So you're restricting yourself so much. You're depriving yourself of memories and experiences and food and rest and recovery and good times because you want to stick to your routine and stick to your schedule so bad so that you can eventually look a certain way. And if it's so out of balance that trumps memories and everything that life has to offer, then I would reevaluate the approach that you're taking, because I think it's so important for us to realize that looking good is not everything. My definition of healthy and fit is someone who takes good care of their body, yes, looks good, but feels good, has energy, is in balance with their training and nutrition. So they train multiple times a week, but they also know when to take a rest day. They eat all the foods that they love, but they also make sure that they're getting enough nutrients in, and they're focusing on their protein intake, and they're reaching their physical goals, but they're not depriving themselves of the foods and the experiences that they love. And they're not doing it out of fear, but out of empowerment, out of wanting to be a fitter, stronger, healthier person. And that's where the difference is. There has to be a balance. It has to be a healthy relationship with achieving your body goals. There has to be a healthy relationship with fitness and nutrition, and not an extreme one. So if you're the type that is punishing themselves because you're not doing enough, I want you to take a different approach. I want you to write down all the things that you are doing. And I want you to realize that you're already doing so good for doing those things. And if you're already training multiple times a week, and if you're already focusing on your nutrition, then you need to maybe realize that this extreme behavior or this extreme approach is not getting you where you want to be. And if it is getting you where you want to be, is this where you want to be for the rest of your life? Not being able to enjoy the foods that you love and the experiences? Or do you want to find a way that you can balance that out, still be able to achieve your body goals, and still be able to enjoy everything that you love to eat? And I think we all deep down know when we're in the unhealthy area or when we're in the healthy area. I think it's important for us to realize that. And maybe you won't change it within a day, but it's important to realize that this approach of extremism and obsession and forcing yourself through things and punishing yourself if you're not doing well enough is not going to get you where you want to be in the long run. It's not going to get you your dream life, your dream body. Because in my eyes, my dream body is a body that I have even when I enjoy all the experiences that I have, and that I don't have to stress about certain things. And I don't have to stress about whether I ate that brownie or not. And I don't have to stress about if I skip my workout or not. That's when it's my dream body. It looks good and I can do all of the things that I love. Because you got to take care of that body. It can look good, like in my competition, but you can be totally out of touch with it at the same time. And that's not something that you want. So that was my heartfelt episode today about how my OCD influenced my fitness journey and what I learned from that. And what I learned from that is that when it's obsessive, it's never healthy, and you deserve better than that. And it doesn't need to be obsessive for you to achieve your body goals. It doesn't need to be obsessive. It can be in healthy balance. It can be something that you enjoy and that excites you, but that doesn't take away from the rest of your life. So, yeah, I think that's my message to you. So if you're listening to this and you are one of those people that is obsessively trying to achieve their body goals to the point where you're hurting yourself and punishing yourself and forcing yourself through things even though you know you shouldn't, then I would take some time to reflect on that and think about, how would you speak to your loved one if they were doing this to themselves? Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it was valuable, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful day. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and you feel like you got a lot of value out of it, it would mean the world to me if you would rate and review the podcast and share it with someone who you feel like would get a lot of value out of it. In the meantime, come hang out with me on my Instagram @ManoukVink, or join my free challenge, which will be linked in the show notes. It's academy.nukesfitness.com/join-challenge. If you can't remember that name, check the links in the show notes, and I hope to see you there.